dozens of proposed ballot questions. Just got the green light from State Attorney General Andrea Campbell. One of a few big hurdles they have to clear before they can go before Massachusetts voters next year. A huge variety of initiatives made the cut. Many of them are already intensely controversial, but whether you'll have a chance to vote on them hinges on what happens next. GBH News State House reporter Katie Lannan joins me on the big ideas that just move forward and the complicated process that could bring them to the ballot in 2024. Katie, good to see you, and thanks for being here as always. So in your write-up for GBH News, you said that the total tally of ballot questions that were approved, 34, I believe,
that's right,
is not quite as impressive as it initially seems. Why is that?
Yeah, so part of the lengthy and complex process of getting on the ballot is that there are usually several court challenges to a lot of these, and they have to go through the AG's office. So lots of times you'll see groups that support one particular policy submit several different versions of a question with wording tweaks, minor differences in hopes of clearing all those hurdles. So there's things like the proponents of a voter ID ballot question submitted 8 versions. The group that wants to define drivers for companies like Uber and Lyft as contractors, not employees, they have, I think, 9 versions. So ultimately, they'll kind of coalesce behind one. You know, you're not going to have 8 voter ID questions on your ballot. Okay,
so they'll go with the one that they deem most legally viable and maybe politically viable as well?
Yeah, there's a lot to consider.
Okay. When you look at the array of questions out there, are there any that you see that would make a big difference in the way a large number of Massachusetts residents live on a daily basis? Because some of them are pretty esoteric, like Diana DeZoglio, the state auditor, looking for explicit authority to be able to audit the legislature. That's sort of an insidery Beacon Hill thing that could benefit citizens. But which ones might make a big difference in ordinary people's lives?
Yeah, I think it really depends on kind of who the person is, as you alluded to there, right? Like if you're someone who has found health benefits from psychedelic substances, a move to decriminalize some of those might make a huge difference for you. If you are a person who works in the service industry, who works a tipped job as a server, there's a proposal to eliminate the tipped minimum wage, gradually bring that up to the same level as the full minimum wage, and that, I think we'll see an argument that could have broader ramifications for maybe diners in restaurants, restaurant owners as well.
I remember going to a press conference for that last year, I think.
Yeah, there's been some advocacy kind of within the legislature around that, and now we'll see that at the ballot as well. One that has the potential to affect a broad swath of people throughout the state is the proposal backed by the MTA, the Mass Teachers Association, opposed by a number of business groups, that would stop using the MCAS exam as a graduation requirement.
Yeah, that seems like a biggie.
Absolutely. It wouldn't eliminate the test as a whole. It would just decouple it from graduation, and students would be able to prove their competency in other ways.
And we should mention probably State Rep Mike Connolly's push to give cities and towns the authority to implement rent control if they want. One fascinating thing to me there is that people who would like to, some other people who'd like to see rent control become a reality again don't like that he's doing it this way, right? They want to try to go through the legislature rather than the direct democracy route.
Yeah, and it is really interesting to see a legislature pushing kind of an alternative to going through the legislature, right? People take things to the ballot a lot of times when they aren't getting traction in the legislature. And we've certainly seen efforts to lift that statewide ban on rent control, which was put in place at the ballot. That hasn't gotten a lot of traction within the legislature over the last several years.
My recollection, probably in large part from your reporting, is that legislative leaders have not sounded overly enthusiastic about that. So, and I would think that Mike Connolly, my guess would be that Mike Connolly maybe has a sense of where the legislature's headed and what they might or might not do. Any biggies that didn't make the cut that people should know about?
So one of the things that's interesting is the way the AG certifies the questions. She's looking at whether they're constitutionally sound. She's not looking at whether it's good policy, whether she personally likes it. But the Constitution lays out a bunch of rules for what can go on the ballot. And one of the things is that if a similar question has gone before voters in the past 2 elections, nope, not getting through this time. So some of the ones she did not certify which only a small number out of the 42 filed with her didn't get certified. 3 of those would have imposed voting reforms that include a ranked choice voting system, and that failed at the ballot in, I believe, 2020, so it's still not able to go back before voters.
What happens next for the people who want these things to end up on the ballot next year?
Yeah, it's a long road to the 2024 ballot from here. The next step for campaigns is to gather somewhere around 75,000 registered voter signatures in the next 11 weeks. That's a huge number. It's more than the population of Framingham or Haverhill, and there's a big lift there. And of course, we will also see, as I mentioned, some legal challenges come through. The Supreme Court or State Supreme Judicial Court, I should say, might end up weighing in on whether some of these are in fact ballot suitable. For the campaigns that do get the signatures that they need by this fall, winter kind of time period, you'll see the next step there is the legislature decides if they want to pass it right there, if they want to put forward an alternative. We saw that a few years ago with what became known as the Grand Bargain, the package of law, the law that gradually raised the minimum wage while also folding in some more retailer business-friendly language like phasing out time and a half on holidays, so the legislature can put forward a compromise.
And let me ask you about one thing really quickly. There's a proposal to restore voting rights to people who are incarcerated for felony crimes. Different procedure for that one to move forward, right? Because it would be a constitutional amendment.
Yep, even windier, even longer. That'd be for 2026. The legislature has to sign off on it twice in 2 sessions before that could reach the ballot, and they have to go through the signature gathering process as well there.
I hugely appreciate this primer because it is such an insanely complex process. Thank you for the overview. Katie Lannan, good to see you.
Thank you. Sure, we'll talk about it again.